Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University. Today's guest on Better Than I Found It is Western Texas College head men's and women's coach, Bronc Fleming. Bronc's journey to college coaching might look a little different than most, with his having a background in FFA and also competitive rodeo, but his impact on his student athletes is no less significant than any other coach. We talk about the most influential coach in his life and the possible impact of the pending NCAA legislation on roster limits and how it might affect junior colleges. Finally, we discuss his Christian faith and how he's able to use that to benefit his coaching approach. Bronc is one of the good guys, and I know you'll see that in this episode. I hope you enjoy. Okay, Better Than I Found It listeners. I appreciate you all joining me again today. Please welcome my latest guest, Bronc Fleming from Western Texas College, the men's and women's coach at Western Texas College. Bronc, it is so great to have you on here. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and you and I saw each other a couple of weeks ago at Bear Ridge, and I'm just glad we're making it happen.
Oh, for sure. Long-time listener, first-time caller, if you will. Yeah, I think I've heard every podcast. I've replayed them. Actually, a little cool story that you'll like is one of my former players from my first couple of years. He's a grad assistant up at Lubbock Christian now, and he sent me a text the other day, and he said, "Hey, Coach, what was that podcast you used to play from time to time when we were driving down the road?" He said, "I'm leaving on my first trip with the guys, and I want to play it." And I said, "Well, Clem, that's exciting because y'all were actually listening." So I would kind of cherry pick, things that I thought they needed to hear, and I would just play it, normally have their headphones on and everything else. So, but yes, big fan of the podcast, big fan of yours. And
Well, thank you. What is his name?
Clement Catu.
Okay, so he's
grad
coaching
assistant.
college golf?
Yes, he's grad assistant there at Lubbock Christian. There with Jeff Majeski. They both, I guess that's kind of unique. They played together on the team. Jeff graduated, took over that team, and now he's got Clem there.
So he actually played there as well, or not?
Yes. Yeah, he played for me and then went to Lubbock Christian.
Well, let's do that. Let's start right there. You're at Western Texas College. You also played there. So what's it like? I've asked Alan Bratton this question. I've asked a lot of guys that question. When you get to coach at your alma mater, that's kind of a special deal. What kind of pride do you take in that?
So for me, it's exciting. My background and my actual quote unquote playing time there will look a little different than most golfers. I started playing golf summer before 8th grade. Was lucky enough to get fairly good at it for West Texas. Was recruited by Coach Ham, Milton Ham here at WTC. I still, looking back as the guy that's out recruiting and looking, I think he was recruiting me because he went to church with my grandparents.
Okay.
But, so then my senior year hit, and our high school golf coach had left. It pretty much devastated me. That was really the first guy I ever had that really believed in me in my golf game. He left. I didn't take golf very seriously that year, and I actually didn't even show up here at Western Texas my freshman year. I went over to Howard College and hung out with some old rodeo friends, and not a good decision. I wasn't a good kid at the time. I needed somebody like me to just really yank me by the collar and say, "Hey, get back over here." So fast forward, I show back up my beginning of what had been my sophomore year, my second freshman year, and I walked in his office and said, "Coach, I'm here to play." And he said, "You're about a year late, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And so he let me play there. I was there 2 or 3 weeks with them. I practiced with them a little bit, played some qualifiers, actually qualified for the van. And he said, "You're not going this time." And I said, "I understand." And then a couple weeks into that, there was a barbecue tournament I got invited to over in Odessa. Pretty good Calcutta, actually won a pretty good chunk of money, and decided that I didn't need to actually play college golf. So I stayed there going to school, but I was around his golfers a lot. And so really for me, it makes it a whole different deal of wanting to make these kids or help these kids take advantage of the opportunity that we're affording them by letting them come play college golf. WTC as a junior college, right up there with the ranks of Midland, Odessa, Hutch as far as long lasting tradition. When I was there was a men's golf team, there was a men's and women's basketball team, and then the rodeo team. Now we have, just about every sport on campus besides football. So it's really fun to, try to take part of it too. Is one thing is I'm proud to have been there. I'm even prouder to have been back. Um, is to try to get some of these kids that maybe come in with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because they didn't go D1 right off the bat and they're coming to play junior college golf, is to show them what it kind of looks like, even though we're at a small college, show them what it looks like at a university in ways by going and supporting the volleyball team or whatever it is. And, we hashtag everything on Instagram with always a Westerner and, just trying to build that. And I actually grew up 20 minutes from here. I live in my grandparents' old house. So I grew up playing that golf course that we have on campus. And so it's just really neat to be there and know that my playing time didn't happen in college like maybe it should have, but I get to make a difference now on the other side of things. And I think it's a way bigger impact than if I'd have been just another little cocky golfer walking around Sammy Ball.
Well, I appreciate you telling me that story. I didn't know that. Actually, you just taught me a lot that I didn't know. I did look on the website and saw that you guys had rodeo, which is really cool. It's Western Texas, surely. You got to have a rodeo team. So how do those competitions look? Have you ever, I'm sure you've been to some of them.
Yeah, I actually grew up rodeoing. I was a team roper when I was a kid. Matter of fact, till I was 12 years old, if you'd have told me that I wasn't going to be our world champion team roper, I'd have told you your cheese has slid off the cracker because that's all that was going to happen.
Wait. Your cheese has slid off the cracker?
Your cheese has slid off the cracker.
Okay.
It's up there with you bumped your head. But was very confident that that's what I was going to do. And so, but yeah, it's a whole different animal there. In itself, which it actually prepared me to really to be a golf coach or to help kids with golf. And, in rodeo, from the time you start, you're competing for money. You're putting money up from the time you start at 8 years old, whatever age it is, and you drive 4 or 5 hours and you compete, you get one shot, one opportunity. And if you miss or you get bucked off or whatever the deal was, you're on down the road to the next one. Maybe next week when you're out of money, you're out of money. And so the deal looks completely different in college. Those kids are actually making money. 2 years ago, a Western Texas rodeo cowboy named Damian Brennan from Australia. He actually made the national finals rodeo the last year that he was at WTC. He actually just set this year. He set the career or the year-long earnings record in the saddle bronc riding. It's our most successful program on campus. A lot of kids get to come over, done well. The coach there, now he was my first or second year, whatever you want to call it, was his first year. So we joke a lot about, when they ran my stuff through for the employee side of things, like they're going to blow the machine up with my records from being in college there. But, yeah, it's fun. They host a rodeo every year. One of my neat things of being in junior college with the number of international athletes that we have is watching them experience things for the first times. And one of my favorite things is to actually watch them when they go to the rodeo that we host and they sit up there and they get into it. And then all of a sudden, a lot of them end up going to a Western wear store and coming up with some boots. And, I kind of joke all the time, like we're going to turn them into cowboys, but we're going to keep them away from the cowboys too. But,
yeah, exactly. You get a Scandinavian kid in boots and a cowboy hat, you've done something right there. But
for sure,
my favorite country singer of all times is George Strait, and two of his absolute best songs. One, Amarillo by Morning. He's talking about getting to the next rodeo, and Cheyenne, which is a story about his relationship ending, and he's just headed to the next rodeo.
I can still make it to Cheyenne. Yep, yeah. That was my life for a while, and then some, even as an adult, in between some golf. But but I think it is, it's thing that I tell the kids all the time when we talk. They hit a bad shot, and we all see it, and next thing we know, a round's ruined or a tournament's almost ruined, and I'm like, hey, the world I grew up in, man, you had one shot. Mm-hmm. This world, we've got 66 to 72 other shots to still have a successful day. Let's get it down. So
that's pretty good perspective right there. So another part of your background, other than rodeo, is FFA, Future Farmers of America. So I'm gonna tell a little story. My dad was in the FFA in the 1940s in Abilene, Texas, And he was so not interested in FFA. And the county fair was coming up, and he had these capons that he was supposed to get ready to show at the county fair. And first of all, I went on Google just to make sure I knew exactly what a capon was, because my dad always told this story as a kid. Now, you know what a capon is, correct?
Birds. Yep.
Okay, it's a bird. Yeah, this
Yep.
is a capon is that, and I Googled this, is a male chicken that is gelded at a very young age and then fed a rich diet of milk or porridge. They're larger than a chicken, a bit smaller than a turkey, but more flavorful than either. Capons are full-breasted with tender, juicy, flavorful meat that is well suited to roasting. So a capon, that's a really good bird to show at the fair, correct?
Yep.
Well, my dad was always he wanted to show at the fair because they got out of school the whole week. But you had to be with your animals, correct? So he found out what time his birds that he had not taken care of, he had not prepared them for this county fair. And he found out what time the judges were going to be by there. So he wanted to be there an hour earlier and stay until the judges left. So they looked like he was, there with his birds. And when he got there on the day of the judging, his buddies had put a sign up there that said, "These capons fed on Falstaff beer." And it was like they were the skinniest, scrawniest, most miserable looking birds you'd ever seen. But anyway, so my dad was in the FFA. He just did it begrudgingly. But when I was at Ebon North High School, I had two players, and we won three state championships in a row. Two players on that team. One was a guy named Matt Moore, whose dad bought him a lifetime hunting and fishing license on the day he was born. That's how much of an outdoorsman this family was. And the other was McCrae Brunker, who ended up playing at Central Oklahoma and won the state high school championship. McCrae won the state championship in golf in an Edmond FFA hat. I mean, he was a future farmer all the way. So you got that background. Tell me about those kids compared to the golf kids you coach.
So yeah, I grew up doing it. Of course, I grew up, like I said, 20 miles south of where I live now. We played sports and everything else, but that was really what I really loved. That was one of my true passions. I mentioned earlier, I started playing golf summer before 8th grade. That was just after a divorce took away rodeo and things. And I did love golf. I mean, I liked it instantly. The cool thing about, 4-H and FFA was leaving to go to the shows, just like your dad knew you get out of school for that week of that fair. And so getting to travel to places like San Antonio and Houston and those things were certainly, were highlights of those things. But, there is such a need in America for people to know where their food comes from. I mean, I think if we get to the end of the day, we can throw words like GMOs and we can throw all those things around all we want. And ultimately, we want the same people that probably want to completely cancel the GMOs, probably the same person that wants to feed the world, but we can't figure out how to do it. And so, through just 4-H and FFA on the livestock showing side of things, you're going to learn so much responsibility. This is another thing that I do use to make notes to my team is that, in that world, you get these animals well in advance. My kids still actively stock show to this day. I mean, that's a sideline of ours. That's what I did for a living until I got this call to coach here at Western Texas. You're going to spend so many months, so many thousands of dollars preparing these animals. And when you go to the show, when you get ready to present these animals, you mentioned the judge coming by to look at your dad's birds. You have no impact other than your performance in the ring that day. Now, the way you can present them and the way you can show them matters, and it's huge. You've got to go in with a let's kill them mindset, just like we do on the golf course. But ultimately, it's a completely outside guy that's going to decide the fate of that project, how you're going to do that day. And, I tell when we get a bad break on the golf course, I try to just tell the kids like, hey, there's going to be things in life that are completely out of our control. I actually have, from time to time, we get some golfers in that grew up showing. Most of them are a lot like your dad, or like Tom Shaw's story, showed one time and got his country club membership when he won his steer show. But and most of them get in and get out. It's not for everybody because it's a large investment. It's time. I mean, there's no days off. I mean, you've got to just about think about if you're going on summer vacation or not, if you're going to stock show. But those kids do understand what it's like to get up early. They know what it's like to stay up late. They know what it's like to do the extra to put the work in. And I actually have a kid on my team this year that I didn't even know he showed. I'd seen his name around West Texas and started kind of talking to him a little bit. And then we ran into each other at a pig show one day. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing here? He said, oh, we show. And I'm like, cool. And, just opens those doors. And he's an example. I think my team sees it this year too. He's probably the first one we've had in that actually was all in on stock showing. And he came in and he'd gotten a little pudgy over the summer. And every time I saw him, I'm like, hey, you better get to running. You better get to doing something. Them 36 whole days are going to get you. And he came in a little bit soft and a typical West Texas kid that really didn't know how to practice when he got here. And we laid some things out for him. We put him on the Stairmaster and doing some things. And, it's just been fun to watch a kid that I know the work ethic truly came from him, through those projects. And then just the leadership and meeting people. And, we've got a lost art for sure. I know you're on the phone a lot recruiting, and a huge lost art in being able for young people to be able to talk to people because you can't text everybody. And through 4-H and FFA, a lot of those leadership roles come and they have to be able to talk. They have to be able to be personable. And so, yeah, I love the program. I really would have never dreamed I wasn't doing it for a living. And then here comes this college golf thing.
Well, this college golf thing is a pretty good gig. You and I both know that. But you mentioned earlier your high school coach being such a big influence. Was he the biggest influence on your golf? If not, was somebody else there too to take his place? But talk about the influence, a direct influence on your coaching philosophy and the way you love golf.
So yeah, for sure. Like I said, when I started, I actually didn't even mean to start playing golf. I had moved with my mom. We had a lady that was teaching chemistry in town that was also a former pro tennis player. She was having a tennis camp, and my mom's like, you're not just sitting around the house. We didn't have any animals at the time. And so she sent me and my little brother to tennis camp, and I liked it okay. But some of the kids there were members of our local country club, and I use the country club term very loosely, as you well aware, growing up in your part of Oklahoma. But they invited me to go play golf, and I'm like, I ain't going to play golf. I said, I've drove by those places. I said, that's retarded. I mean, you're dumb. You're going to hit a golf ball and go chase it and find it again. And the next day they talked me into going out there. And the first time I hit golf balls, they were like, oh, you're full of it. You've played golf before. And I'm like, I've never touched a golf club. They're like, no, you look like you've played golf. And I'm like, I've never touched a golf club. And just got hooked. And so rock along there, we had a guy show up on the driving range one day, just striping these little spoon 2-woods off the grass. And me and my best friend are sitting there, and where this guy pulls up in like a old Toyota, some kind of sporty looking car, gets out with slacks on and just a plain white t-shirt. He gets up there on the range beside us. And I think our range was 265 yards long or something, but it was something if we could get it to the back end. And this guy just standing there with this 2-wood, just pow, pow, pow. And I'm like, what is this guy? Like something special. And come to find out, he was our new golf coach in town. And he was one of the first guys that really believed in me, showed me a lot of things. I'll never forget the day that I shot 79 there into my freshman year. And, he's like, hey, it's fixing to take off. And he kind of poured into me a lot. And then, yeah, like I said, he left there our senior year. Before our senior year, he had a chance to go back to New Mexico where he grew up. He was a 4-time state champ, played at McMurray back in the day. And so, that was a lot of the things. He was one that actually even ingrained the thought of me going to play in college, and then when he left, yeah, it was devastating. I mean, it was to me because, I didn't grow up there, had just moved there, never got the other kids have been playing golf all their life. Oh, they're the ones that are great, and I was beating them, and didn't use it in the best way, but definitely an influence there. And then actually a few years later, I was recruiting a kid, and he ended up being best friends with his dad, and my former coach were best friends. And so we got to reconnect. And so that's been cool.
Who are your favorite coaches of all times? I mean, that coach would be obviously, but if you talk about coaches in any sport that's really affected your coaching philosophy, who would those guys be? Mine is John Wooden. I just look back on what he accomplished, but go ahead. Who is yours?
Oh, I'd have to look at like Coach K. Um, just doing that the whole time. I mean, Saban obviously, um, probably questionable at times on a lot of
Hmm.
things, I guess, in a lot of ways. But and then at the end of the day, probably one that, he's getting older now. He still hosts an event we go to. Having been a West Texas kid, I'll have to give Delnor Poss some credit for
Hmm.
being a guy that came in and didn't know anything about golf, and came in, and I had several friends that got to go play for him over there at Midland at the junior college. And, and they all told me, they're like, I was like, man, what, this guy doesn't know golf. They're like, yeah, but he knows how to get it out of us. And, things like that have always just been inspiring to me. And then, um, yeah, those guys.
I'm glad you mentioned Delnor. He's in the GCA Hall of Fame. Had an amazing career, but he was coaching when I was coming through college, so it's kind of amazing. He's in his mid to late 80s now. It's pretty amazing. So
Yeah. Yeah. He still hosts the event up there at Ruidosa every year. And, it's always a joy to go up there and see him. And he pops in time to time around West Texas. He goes, I'm going to watch them Shaps, but good luck to them Westerners.
good guy, Delnor. So you know, all coaches, and you're included in this, I am, anybody who's coached for a while has had an inspiring story from a player. I look back at Wyndham Clark and what he overcame to do what he did at Oklahoma State and later at Oregon and now as a PGA Tour player, that his was a pretty dark, terrible time when he was playing for me at Oklahoma State. But he inspired me with the way he was able to overcome that. So you mentioned a player that you had named Torero November from Zimbabwe. What was his story and why was it so inspiring?
We're still unfolding it. He's in his sophomore year playing for me right now. So Torero came to me, as my favorite part of coaching now is where they don't all have to come through a recruiter. When you get a former player that says, hey, coach, here's a kid. We actually had a few people from Zimbabwe that had played for us, and he told me about Torero. And I looked at the swing, I looked at the scores, I talked to the kid, fell in love with him, like, hey, this kid's, this would be fun. And I didn't know this about him. So right before he gets ready to come over, excuse me, I've got a little bit of allergies, but um, this buddy of his that had played for me, that was actually playing at Drexel at the time, he said, hey, coach, I got to tell you something about T. And I'm like, oh, what have you got me into? I'm like, you've
Mhm.
waited all this time. And he said, he limps a little bit, but it doesn't bother him. I'm like, okay. I said, like, got hurt recently or what? He goes, no, I'll let him tell you. So when he shows up on campus and he walks up and there's this kid, this 95-pound looking, he's bigger than that, but skinny looking Zimbabwe kid come walking up. And the first thing I noticed is how extremely small his legs were. I mean, like tiny. His ankles were tiny. Feet weren't straight to the ankle. And being a stock show guy, one of the things we judge livestock on is structure. And the first thing I'm like, how's this kid getting around 36 holes? Well, Torero was born with both feet were born bilateral clubfoot. So as a very small baby, they had to go in and break his feet, completely turn his feet around, put them on, as straight as they possibly could. And it's so inspiring to me because it's not an excuse. It doesn't, like, I've never seen it bother him one bit. Every once in a while, he'll ask for a push cart, maybe that back nine of a 36-hole day, but it's not very often. The kid's upper body strength and those things that have just come in, and God just made it where, hey, you're born with this, but man, you're going to be all right. And great attitude. I just think that so many people would. And of course, he was a baby. He says he doesn't remember it. I joke with him. I said it must have hurt bad because it was a while before you walked after they put your feet on. And, but just to know that how many other kids would use that as an excuse day in, day out, that, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. But he's actually come in. He's played one bag for us a few times. Came in um, a little behind, but missed a few vans at the first time, but he ended up finishing the national championship at 13th, shot one of the low rounds of the week.
Mm.
And then just to watch him just overcome adversity, because I know it still had to have bothered him as a kid. And to watch him just keep his attitude on the golf course, I know are all reflections of the things that he had to go through when he was a kid, and um, it's just impressive. I mean, he's the first one when the driver gets a little sideways, he pulls out this 2-iron that I don't know how far it goes, but it's far. And as far as he wants it to go, and I'm like, I would never even own a driver if I could hit that shot every single time. But no, Torero's a good kid and just a good example. He inspires me daily of, just, and he walks up. And I mean, I have people all the time. We have a lot of the members there at our home course. They'll be like, hey, what's wrong with him? And I'm like, man, he doesn't really like to talk about it as much, and he'll probably get mad if he hears this, but it's just inspiring to know that, there's somebody out there that'll go up and just overcome and not use it.
I think that's what God has given us is the human spirit is pretty strong if it's allowed to spread its wings, if you will. And I know God gave him something inside that said, I'm not going to make this an excuse. It's going to be, in fact, I'm going to do it in spite of this. But that kind of leads me toward my next thing, and that is your faith. Your faith in Christ is so, so important. Talk about how you've been able to use that in coaching and how it's aided you in coaching.
Yeah, it's definitely something I grew up with. Was not the ideal kid. My parents, we went to church, but not regularly. Most of the time we'd go see my grandparents or whatever. It was later in life. I always knew, even through my dark times, I knew God was real. I knew he was there. I probably spent more time hiding in the shadows, knowing that he's real, never denying it. It was as an adult that really when Molly and I got married, actually is when things really started happening. So I was living in San Angelo, had a little ranch down there, and she came into town one weekend to see me, and she was like, oh, so, where do you go to church at? And I said, oh, I go to this church over here. It's around the corner. And I knew just enough people there that when I got there, it looked like I went to church pretty regularly, because they were like, hey, Bronc, how are you? They were shocked, but probably. But so we just started plugging in, and that's when I'm a relationship guy, Mike, as you know, just you can tell being around me what we've been to these CGF things. And I started realizing how much more there is than the Saturday night lights and, laying around on Sunday morning. And I look back now and, over 15 years of really, really following the Lord and trying to listen where he wants me to be and do these things, is if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't even have my job today in this. So what the coach deal brought me. When Matt McCormick was the head coach here, he took the assistant job at Oral Roberts. He left fairly late minute. They hired the assistant coach. She was needing an assistant coach, and we'd actually knew them when she was playing in San Angelo, and her husband was working in the bag room at San Angelo Country Club, where I was a member. And that was really the only connection we had. Well, then we move back up to Colorado City, Snyder area, and they're going to the same church we are. And it's just like, oh, well, there's the Cooks, no big deal. Don't think anything of it. Her husband and I played on a church league softball team together. And one day she asked my wife, she said, you think Bronc could be interested in coaching college golf? And she's like, I don't know. I mean, until 5 years ago, he played every day, but I don't even know if he knows where his golf clubs are. And she's like, well, he doesn't need to know where those are for sure. Matter of fact, it'd be better if he didn't. So through those connections is what opened this door. And then I look back and I just think of all the people that have influenced me in my life. They were all there for a reason. It was all God things. It was all just that. And at the end of the day, and we're at typically fourth to seventh ranked junior college. We play in a very competitive district. I mean, the 7 of the top 10 teams in the country are usually there at every tournament we play. Championships are hard to win. We all know that. At the end of the day, my main goal as a coach is I want to show these kids, the guys and the girls, another example. Most of them come from good homes, and those that don't, they see it a better example. But Mike, at the end of the day, if I can hopefully show them what a good husband looks like, what a good father looks like. My kids are around our program a lot. Their school bus actually drops them off on campus, and we have them out to the house for dinner, and my wife works on campus. We joke, we don't know if she's the second assistant or if she's the team mom, but she takes a lot of stains out of shirts and things. But I just figure as junior college coach, yeah, I want to win. I'm as competitive as anybody. I mean, I want to win. I mean, my whole upbringing has been about winning, but my job is to get these kids to another college after WTC and to show them, an example. I figure God sends me 14, 15 kids every year, so that I need to be there for. Most of them, some of them come in as Christians. A lot of them don't. I mean, a lot of them have come from countries where you actually be made fun of if you were openly admitted you were a Christian. And it's just neat to see them watch some questions from time to time. We've baptized a few of them. They've started going to church. Some of them fought it all the way, and we're still buddies. We became that friend after the player coach relationship ends, where I still mentor on them a little bit when maybe they're trying to play golf professionally or whatever it is. But it's everything. We wouldn't have anything without it. And I'm proud of it. And, there's days I wish I was at a Baylor so I could just make sure we had Bible study every Tuesday morning instead of having to find that line of a state funded school where, you want to make sure you're not crossing the line, but you want to be doing the work that you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, well, that's good of you to say. I think for me, I'm encouraged to do it here, which is great. But I always like to hear another coach's perspective on how they interweave their faith into their coaching, and you do an amazing job of that. I've watched from afar. But you mentioned getting players to the next level, getting them to a university, a Division I university, or maybe a mid-major, whatever it may be. But that kind of brings up a point. As we're doing this interview, we don't know what the new legislation is going to be for Division I, but we do know that roster limits are coming at some point. We don't know what the number will be, and we don't know when that is actually going to occur. But when that does happen, how does that change what you're doing and getting players on teams?
Well, that's something I'm definitely going to be relying on you guys that I've got to know, in D1. All my players come in and the big majority of them, it's D1 or bust. As soon as they land, it's D1 or bust. I'm going to come here, I'm going to play, I'm going D1. Most of them think they're going top 50. And, I don't bust bubbles. I learned early on in the recruiting stage of this that if I'm the first kid that tells a kid he's not good enough to go play for McGraw, I'm just a jerk that all he heard was he's bad at golf. But when somebody else tells him 2 or 3 times, I'm the nice guy in the corner that was just saying, okay, yeah, let me know how things go. If you get interested, call me. I try to do that a lot within my players too. I want to be honest with them too, though. I figure once they land on campus is a pretty good time to start being honest of like, hey, Conrad's not calling. Okay, let's start talking to some other schools. I'm big on pushing the good D2s, the NAIAs. I mean, it's all about student athlete. I mean, we're students first, and even if they're over here to just play golf, at the end of the day, we've still got to focus on the education. So no doubt it's a concern of mine. I've gone through, I've just looked at numbers. I've pulled random teams just to see what they have on their roster right now, just to say it does land on that number of 9. So that's going to definitely change the way that looks. The best players that come out of JUCO at the end of the year are still going to have those homes in those mid-major and up programs, and it's a handful. It's only 2 or 3 a year that end up going to those top ranked schools. And that's just the way it is. I mean, you guys set up your recruiting different. I have noticed since the portal that we're getting more calls than I was before. I think some coaches are figuring out what they've ended up with out of the portal when they know that if they've got a kid that plays for me 2 years and I shoot them 100% straight on what that kid's going to do. And as far as his character and those things, I think that's going to be huge. I think it's going to be interesting to watch. And I've already started, especially with my sophomores right now, because we're really heavy into starting to send those emails. And, I'm saying, hey, we don't know what this is going to look like until these things come down the pipe. I said, we've got to keep doing what we do, which is you've got to send hundreds of emails, period, to get them out there. Stay persistent. And if they show up and they sit in my office and their list is 1 through 25, I usually send them back to the dorm room and say, all right, start that. We can have 1 through 25, but it needs to start with another number in front of it. We've had some players go D1. I mean, before my time, Freddie Anderson played there at Baylor. He was freshman of the year from WTC. And there's one or two out of our district every year that does go to top, those D1s. But as a whole, yeah, I don't know what that's going to look like. I'd be interested to see how it folds out. But I think with my approach of trying to get them out of the D1 or bust mindset, just like an example of, right up there in Oklahoma right now, I think there's some things happening in some of those programs that are changing, and I try to tell the kids as much as anything is, hey, they're one player away from moving up 75 rankings. I mean, instantly they could go from a 205 to a 150 with one good player. So don't be hesitant. Look for what they want. We try to get a checklist of what the kids want, in their next school. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I think sliding down, trickle down effect, those things are probably going to be not as many of those spots, till we get down to that lower than 100, which hopefully the DQ coaches pay attention, some of the NAIAs, and be like, hey, I can grab a few more of these JUCO kids now they're good. And you know what you've got. I mean, you don't have a kid that's just sat there for 2 years, then jumped in the portal. So
yeah, the main thing is, to me, it's D1 or bust, or a Power 5 conference and bust is not a good philosophy, because what you're really looking for is an opportunity to play, compete, develop your game, flourish, and move on to another level after that. And it's going to be a logjam. And when I first saw this legislation might be coming down the pike, I was playing all these scenarios in my head about, well, there's going to be 800 athletes in the portal in Division I trying to figure out a place to go. And I kind of took a negative view of it at first, but eventually, especially once the logjam is over, I think everybody's going to be better off eventually. At first, it's going to be tough on you guys. It's going to be tough on us, and we know that. But I think it'll work itself out.
And I think it'll open some doors, especially for some of these top 100 Texas kids. Because right now they're not coming to us. Very rarely. They're going to go to one of us, even if they need to or not. They're going to go, and any program is good. Every golf coach is important. Every golf team is important. And I don't want that to come across as not, but I see a lot of kids settle for some colleges that they shouldn't have settled in their freshman year, when if they would have came and played for just probably any of us in the top 10 of junior college, their next school would have been a better fit, maybe a better program, a more successful program, by coming to get that experience with us. Because it's not easy. I mean, we saw right there at Berry Ridge what out there was, and I know those weren't y'all's, your top 5 players there, but we had, nearly 10, 11 D1 players there at that tournament. And there was 3 or 4 in that top 10 individually. So, I mean, it kind of shows you're not just going to JUCO because you shoot 80. You're going to JUCO because you need a little more experience, and you need to be shooting in those 60s, or you're not even going to come close, especially in ours. I know when you drop down to D2 and D3, it gets a little easier, but these kids, and there's a big need, I think, to let people, I need to do a better job. It's been on my heart to do that, to inform people about what junior college golf is. I've actually recorded a couple podcasts. I just haven't put them out yet. I think this is the time too that those things are going to be needed, because I think there's going to be a lot of those high school kids now that with a 9 roster spot, it's not happening.
Yeah, and they're going to have to understand, as I said, opportunity being the most important word, because if you just fixate yourself on only the top teams in the country in Division I, those are not going to have as many opportunities as even there are now. They're not, going forward, there's not going to be as many. So I do think mid-majors, I think the lower mid-major, Division II, Division III, junior college, NAIA are all going to benefit in the long run, because you're going to get some players that would normally have played at a higher level. Well, it's going to raise the level of the golf you guys are playing.
Yes, for sure.
That's great. Well, you mentioned earlier, and I wanted to get to this before we left it, but advice that you've gotten from people, coaches that have inspired you. I always ask coaches, what's the best piece of advice, something you take with you that is part of who you are as a coach, Can you remember the best piece of advice a coach ever gave you that's really benefited you?
Oh, it'd be hard. Ever since you sent that question, I've tried to narrow it down, and it would be near impossible for me to narrow it down to one piece of advice. We talked about faith, and we talked about things, so my first year was the year COVID hit. We had won, we had been successful that year. We get into February there. We won Lubbock Christian's event, which was full of as us, Hutchinson, and the rest were all, top 50 D2 programs. And we won that event. And I honestly left there probably a little bit cocky, a little bit arrogant, which that suddenly shut down when we were standing on a practice green the next week for a tournament and the world stops. And then right after that is probably no doubt the best thing that happened for me as a coach. And that's actually when I met you, is when CGF started having those coaches Bible studies twice a week in the mornings during COVID, when we were all sitting at home or whatever it was. And they would leave those after the Bible study, they'd let everybody visit for 10 or 15 minutes and just kind of leave the camera rolling. Me sitting back, listening, and I actually told Jeremy the other day this. I was like, man, I realized how little I knew. And, one of my things is I tell the players that come in that aren't as ready is, keep your eyes and your ears open, your mouth shut, and you'll learn a lot really quick around the better people. And that's what I did. But I think probably the advice that I use probably daily is I had asked. So Marcus Jones was, he was a couple years older than me. I lived in Graham for a little bit. He actually coached my 6th grade little dribblers basketball team. I think that's why we were undefeated. Had nothing to do with those 3 or 4 kids that went and played D1 basketball on that team. It was all me and MJ. But I just asked one day, I was talking about recruiting. And he says he doesn't remember saying this, but he does think it is something he would say. And I know he said it because I never forgot it. And we were talking about recruiting, and he said, if you'll prayerfully recruit, you'll get the kid you're supposed to have. And, when we miss one, especially on the girls' side, because it's getting harder and harder and harder to get just girls. The programs are growing, and there's not more girls playing golf than there was 5 years ago, but there's a lot more programs. When I get that breakup letter, what I like to call it, really nice, you're a great guy, I loved you, everything else, but I'm going over here, just to know that if I am staying in prayer on those recruits, that, the right kids are going to come. So that would probably be the best advice.
Yeah, I think you get who you're supposed to get. You can't worry about the ones you don't get because they're on another team, and you better get started coaching the ones you do get. That's recruiting in a nutshell. And I appreciate you using the prayerfully doing it. And I know Marcus, that would have been something he would have said to you for sure. Good advice, by the way. So you mentioned women and the fact that there's more programs, but not necessarily more. Talk about like the biggest difference for you. I coached 1 year as a women's head coach, and it was different. I didn't realize it, but you needed to think a little bit about fashion, relationships, emotions, shopping. Some of those things have to be part of the equation before you even get to the golf. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory manner. It's like you need to switch gears a little bit. For you, what's the biggest change for men and women coaching?
Obviously the recruiting is big, but just on the day in, day out, I've found I enjoy it. I have to put myself in the right mindset. There for a couple of years, I got to walk with some really good players throughout the year, as the assistant. And, I have to get ready when I go do that. And again, it's nothing negative. It's nothing different, but I need to be doing the same thing on the men's side of making sure, hey, I'm ready. What is the plan today? It's made me become a better men's coach and women's coach by me having that focus of where are we at that day. In junior college, we play a lot of events. We're on the same golf course, and that's tough to bounce back and forth. I try to stay out of their way, make sure they're, rolling good and just kind of rolling in there. And, like I say, at the same time, it's, just mindset. I do like it because when they're hitting the ball bad, that means they missed it in the left rough, not 400 yards out into the desert. They're just, their miss is they're upset and they're just on the edge of the fairway instead of, rolling through there. And then through this change of Not bringing in just, we're actually looking at more developmental type players on the girls' side now to be able to get rosters full or just to have more players in. So, you get to watch some get some improvements. They seem to be more coachable on the basic side of things. If like, hey, we're missing it right all day long, let's line up left. They're going to line up left till they hit one straight. And that's what I tell them. Like, hey, you're missing it right. Line up left, line up left, line up left. When you finally miss one and it goes to that other fairway, then we can line back up at the green. You tell the guys that, they're already mad. I'm better than that. I'm going to hit the next one straight. Well, we hadn't hit one all day. So
Well, there are differences, but I think you said something earlier. They may be more coachable than the guys. And I think it is probably true because maybe they come in with less preconceived ideas of how much they know, and they're open to coaching a lot more. And so, when I coached women's golf, I did notice that they would listen to you. And I think I could coach women's golf again. I could. There's no doubt about it. So you tell me about your fall schedule. I know you've already started. We have as well. What have you got left for this fall on both the men's and women's side?
So the men are set to go to New Mexico State's event next week. I'm excited to go up there, play that golf course. We don't get to play. We play some nice golf courses, but we don't get to go play often. It's what intrigues me about going. Obviously, events could have a golf tournament on the highway, and I would be there.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Vince
going
Clark,
to Bear Ridge.
Speaking of Vince Clark.
Yes. So yeah, we open up every year in Andrews, an event called the College Am, which is really neat. It's one college golfer with some amateur golfers, and they're playing a 4-ball, and it's a little bit different, but it's fun. And then we usually go to Vince's down there at Bear Ridge, which I always think's good. Just we do get to see, some D1 scores. We get to see, what I used an example, your old clubhouse that's sitting right there. That's now the real estate office of like, hey, this is what is happening. Like that right there, we would kill for.
Oh, yeah.
And that is what they walked away from to go to something else bigger and better, to see their eyes on it. But, and that golf course is one that I like as a challenge for the guys. And then we go to Ruidoso every year, which I have a love-hate relationship with the links. You can go up there and shoot 18, 17, and 10 and be T3. It's literally a shootout. It's too short for college golfers, but it's fun to go up there. We stay at motel on camp on property. They think we're at the Broadmoor when we pull up. I mean, they think this doesn't get any better than this. And we got New Mexico States, and then we'll play national preview on the men's side at Sand Creek Station. One of my golf courses' favorite ones to coach on, go play on. And then we'll close this fall for the men and the women there at Odessa Country Club. We'll play the old side. I think Strikey got us over on the old side. Paul always wanted to play the link side. It's a little more wide open on that side, but he puts the pins, pretty much D1 style, and what he says, and so we'll close out there. We've had a moderately successful. We were T2 there at Bear Ridge, there at Vince's. We were 4th or 5th, I believe, at Ruidoso last week. Really excited. I keep telling the guys, hey, we need to be playing to April. We do not want to be peaked right now. Our regionals deals, we actually look a little different this year. There'll be 4 teams get through to nationals and then 8 at-larges. We've extended the number of at-larges, which it's there to protect some of these better teams at these better districts. And I'm excited for it. We used to play 108 holes, 2 different golf tournaments to get through for the national deal. And I would see a loss of a sense of urgency to perform. To be honest, I mean, we'd kind of get kind of sideways, and the guys would be kind of like, we can catch up for it next week. We're in a true. That's what they're going to do when they leave us. So I think it's exciting to watch them do what the rest of the country does. So
that's great. It sounds like a really great finish to the fall season. And Bronc, I'm excited about where college golf is and where it's going. There are some uncertainties, but I think we're all going to be fine with that. And I just want to say thanks for your friendship. Thanks for appearing today on Better Than I Found It. And I just want to wish you the best of luck as you continue to go through this journey.
Thank you, Mike. It's been an honor to be on. And George Strait is better than Luke Bryan. You got to bring the speed round back.
I'll bring it back.
Got to bring it back. My foursome, we did it in the 13th, but I'd love to load up you, Shaw, and Marcus Jones. We go to San Angelo Country Club, play 18, then we just go out to Lajitas and play 18 and just hang out for a day. That'd be my dream foursome. So
I love it. Sounds great to me. Well, Bronc,
so
best of luck to your teams, and we will talk to you again soon.
yes, sir. Thank you.
You bet.